Okay, I'm going to be reading another Ivan in The One and Only Ivan to display poetry. When morning comes and the parking lot glimmers with dew, I see the billboard on the highway. There I am, the one and only Ivan, bathed in the pink light of dawn. I look so angry, with my furrowed brow and clenched fists. I look the way my father did the day the men came. I am, I suppose, a peaceful sort. Mostly I watch the world go by and think about naps and bananas and yogurt raisins. But inside me, hidden, is another Ivan. He could tear a grown man's limbs off his body. In the flicker of time, it takes a snake's tongue to taste the air. He could taste revenge. He is the Ivan on the billboard. I stare at the one and only Ivan, at the faded picture of Stella, and remember George and Mac on their ladders adding the picture of Ruby to bring new visitors to the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade. I remember the story Ruby told, the one where the villagers came to her rescue. I can hear Stella's kind, wise voice. Humans can surprise you sometimes. I look at my fingers, coated in red paint, the color of blood, and I know how to keep my promise. I think this chapter is a really good display of poetry because it uses imagery to show the parking lot glimmers with dew, bathed in pink light of dawn, and it's able to put yourself in the scene to visualize it a little more. And then it uses figurative language when he's comparing himself to gorillas or other gorillas. It shows emotion and his feeling of identity and how he's peaceful. And I just think that this was a good chapter to show that, he's going through a lot of things emotionally. And I think that reading this story could help children, maybe relate, even though it's not a gorilla. They're not a gorilla, but Ivan's feeling all these feelings. He's not feeling like other gorillas or how you're supposed to act as a gorilla. So I think that just having the imagery throughout the story of showing how, he feels a little differently and he doesn't feel like he fits in as much. Eventually he does. For part 2 of the assignment, the ELA 3rd grade standard, which is distinguishing their own point of view from the narrators or characters. My first quote that I found was on page 104, and Stella is saying, humans can surprise you sometimes, an unpredictable species, Homo sapiens. And so I think that this would be a really good quote to read and have the kids, talk about perspective and how do you feel when you get an unexpected compliment or an act of kindness done to you. And how do you think Ivan felt? And also coming up with maybe a kindness chart or a kindness poster for the classroom of things you can say to compliment someone, or even if there was a conflict with two friends, you could go to the poster and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I really like your hair today. And I know that as children get older, they don't tend to do that as much, but I know with younger students, it definitely gives a little example of being kind isn't that hard. And then my second quote was, gorillas are as patient as stones, humans not so much. And so I think that this gives a good example of as patient as something, so it compares it. And I think having the children, asking them a question, can you think of examples when humans are patient versus impatient? And then maybe have an activity where you make up scenarios and what would a patient human do in this scenario and what would an impatient person do? And I just think even those visuals are so helpful for students, especially as you're getting older and as you're growing. You see impatient and patient people all the time. But maybe having the comparison of like what could you do if you were patient or what could you do if you were impatient, and like just knowing the opposite of what you could do. And then another question you could ask was, do you agree or disagree with Ivan that humans are patient? Why or why not? And then, everybody has their own opinion, and this could, open up a different kind of discussion of why do you think a human's patient or why not? And then you can kind of like have group conversations, have a whole class conversation, have partner conversations, and you can really just like have them make their own opinions and not just, do something that you all have to do. Like, you all do have to think, well, do you think humans are patient or impatient? But then they get to come up with their own in their brain, like, I agree that humans are patient because, and then they have to give examples. So I think that those would be really good quotes to incorporate in the classroom and have questions like that for the students.